Been a while since I made one of these, hey? This is Megan of the Pipboy.
For this build, I used these standard shop tools to cut metal, EVA foam, craft foam, which is also EVA foam, hot glue, a round container, backpack clasps, dials, various size bottle caps, a telephone cord, a metal mesh tray, a square magnifying lens, paint, Plastidip, some kind of lighting, hey, it's Blade Runner, and vacuum tubes. First I cut up this bungee cord container, sure, for internal support. Normally I create an internal skeleton out of scrap foam, but since my arm has to go through there, that's not really an option, and the foam is gonna wanna reform to its original shape. I cut it in half using tools of various strength and precision. I used a thin rotary bit to cut a wrist hole. Who am I kidding? I used several, probably more than several. I lost count. And then I cleaned it up with the normal bit. That is gonna be the least comfortable thing to wear ever, but it looks like they've preemptively anticipated the well-being of cosplayers when they designed this by putting in all this padding, which is nice. It's nice for them to make the consideration. So I'm gonna follow suit by wrapping it in foam. Sometimes the heat from the glue will cause plastic to crumple, so I apply it to the foam first and let it cool for just a few seconds before I press it against the plastic.
So, I just glued myself to my prop.
While it cooled, I held it together with C47s. Then I scored the part where the foam wrap is going to be under the most stress. I probably should have done that to the rest of it, but I didn't think of it at the time. I laid the parts that I have onto the cutting mat to figure out how long to make the wider diameter part of the cylinder. Then I cut it out. I don't need no 1, 2, 3 blocks. I got vacuum tubes and deli meat containers. Like a pro. I glued that on to make a half shell. Okay, so I was hoping it would go all the way around, but there's supposed to be a trench in the back where the hinge is supposed to be, so it kind of works out. I cut off the excess, made a new piece that was ever so slightly longer than the last, heat formed it, and placed it in a tube to cool. When it had cooled, it retained its shape. I used thin craft foam as a hinge. I also used it as this sort of raised band detail that's on that plate. Now I'm going to move on to the television box because in all honesty, I have no idea how that bottom wrist part is supposed to work. I mean, look at the footage. He puts it on, it's like it's round and then it's flat. What is that? Makes no sense. It's metal and then it's cloth. What's going on? Hey everyone, just want to take a moment to thank all the patrons, all of these people that are gonna scroll by. Actually, let's stand here so they have room to scroll by, right? What the? Should really just put a mat down on the floor, you know? So the reason I haven't done a Fallout video in so long is because every time I did, I would get spammed with demands for power armor. And that is a great build, don't get me wrong. It's just the time my funding for these videos, Patreon, was nowhere near where it needed to be to support that build. However, now, it's actually kind of close. Building a full suit of power armor at the quality that people expect of me is like a full-time job for at least a month and a half. I mean, once you factor in the filming and the editing, it's just not happening on 40 bucks, guys. So if it gets up to 300, I'll totally do power armor. I can split that build into like 3 or 4 videos, like one on each section, legs, chest, arms, head, that sort of thing. So yeah, if I get up to 300, I'll build power armor. If I get more patrons from this video but not enough to hit 300, then I'll build something else a little more manageable from Fallout just for those guys who believed in me. Although I'm gonna have to alternate the video schedule because this video pushed another one a week or 2 away. And I feel like my core audience was expecting me to release that video, so I gotta appeal to them too. And now I'm rambling. Let's get back to building. I glued the screen case on one side at a time because the tension makes it want to pull itself all apart before the hot glue is solidified. So I've done enough of these videos to know that at this point, psychos are gonna start mashing the keyboards about contact cement. That's just their homework labor. Which is like, oh man, what happened to you today, right? So yeah, it is stronger, but it takes longer to work with and it's toxic and I'm in a poorly ventilated apartment. Use whatever works best for you. Before making the other boxes, I lined up the office supply tray to figure out how much mesh I needed to cut from it. I was hoping I could just cut it in half, but no such luck. I cut it out with some itty bitty side cutters. Aren't they cute? Hey, side cutters, what do you get? What? How did, it doesn't, what? Okay, so now that that's done, I can finish the rest of the frame. The frame being the walls of the Pipboy. My words aren't gonna make sense to most people. Why do I try? I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you. I strengthened the television box with a regular box, then moved on to the dial boxes. This took a while because it was essentially trial and error, and they're not a mirror image of each other. I clearly thought they were, and I'll get to that later. The one on the bottom is square, whereas the one at the top is tilted inwards for some reason. Anyway, I built those and used a little bit of scrap PVC left over from the Praetorian sword build to deal with the rounded part. I threw some foil in there to bounce the light around later. Alright, here's where I discover my mistakes, so get ready for some in-cam audio. I made this side to mirror this perfectly, and it doesn't. This one's supposed to be more of a right-angle box shape. And if I hadn't caught that until after I painted, then I'd just leave it, because I mean, that's not the worst mistake in the world to make. But since I haven't sealed it yet, I'm just gonna slice it off with the box cutter. So I sliced that up and rebuilt it, but left one of the panels unglued until I can get the guts in there. All the parts that needed to be rounded but couldn't be bent were sanded on my belt sander. You can also use a rotary tool. When I finished with the last of the foam parts, I coated it in Plastidip. Okay, so when I'm reading these lines, guys, I'm hearing lots of cracking in the back of my neck. That can't be normal. When that dried, I painted it. Then I added various switches, screws, dials, wires, what have you. All those good things to make it more accurate. They're basically greeblies. I mean, I guess maybe this would be considered gack. What would you say, greeblies or gack? I mean, I guess the wire's a gack, but the dials are greeblies. For the dials, I'm using various caps from various beverage containers, not all of which were alcohol, come on. I ended up spray painting the old phone cord black because that's how terrible the nearest thrift stores are. I mean, what thrift store doesn't have a 90s phone cord? Unbelievable. I put in the vacuum tubes and then the lighting before I sealed it up. So these are the more difficult parts to find. I've amassed a collection of vacuum tubes because I go thrifting a lot. You can find them inside old electronics, radios, televisions, those giant computers that had less memory than my microwave. Basically all electronics before transistors were invented, before the 60s, or in whatever prop house built the guns for Warehouse 13. Then I weathered it. Once the weathering was dry, I dropped in a fallout screen cap and a magnifying lens from American Science and Surplus. Sponsor? Nah, not really. Hey, can you guys sponsor me? American Science and Surplus? I'm in Chicago, at least as of recording this. They're basically like if Amazon and eBay had a baby that tried to rebel against its parents by becoming a real store. What was I doing? Finishing the video. And there you have it, one Pipboy. Now I can listen to John Denver on my own time though, because I don't have the royalties to use him here. Rocky Mountain High. I should not be legally allowed to sing. All the right to free speech except for Jake. He can't sing. Hey, thanks for watching everyone. If you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe for more, and don't forget to let me know what props you'd like to see me make in the future. And until then, you can check out some of my other builds in the past, because I've done a bunch. A few, here and there. Jake out!